Hi, this is Jim from RV4x40.com. Welcome to the channel today. We're happy to see you. We're here at the Moutardier campground on Lake Nolin. It's on the Nolin River, which is a Corps of Engineers dam and forms the lake on that river. The river has an interesting history. There was an early explorer and Revolutionary War guy that was in the area, Benjamin Lynn by name, L-Y-N-N. And after the war, he and a number of friends were camped down on the Green River, which is south of here just a little bit. And they were exploring the area in Kentucky. This would have been, I think, in the late 1700s, just opening up to Western exploration at that point. And so Lynn got lost somewhere from his compatriots, and they spent several days looking for him. Every evening they would go back to their camp on the Green River. And the story was still no Lynn. They hadn't found Lynn yet, so that was what they kept saying. And the river ended up getting that name. It's spelled N-O-L-I-N instead of L-Y-N-N, but it is named after Benjamin Lynn for whatever that is worth. The lake itself was formed when a dam was built by the Corps of Engineers in the early 60s as a flood control project. So the level of the lake goes down quite a bit in the winter. Now they drain it down some for storing the spring rains and any runoff that happens then. There's a summer pool which is used more for recreation. It's up somewhat higher than that. I talked to a couple of rangers yesterday, and the lake was about 3 feet above that level. So they're letting out a fair amount of water through the dam control area, the floodgates. They're currently at about 60% open, so there's some video later on you'll see of that. We camped here in large part because we wanted to go to Mammoth Cave, and so we actually spent a couple or 3 days going over there. We went over once just to check out the visitor center and see what there was to do and find out about some of the tours. I went back for an evening tour without Chris. That particular one she didn't want to go on. Then the next day we went back and took basically the available tour. It was set up more for handicapped, and so that had an elevator down into the cave, very minimal walking, about a little over a half a mile or so tour through the cave. It was very interesting. The ranger had a lot of stories and a lot of tips to tell, so we'll cover some of that and give you some pictures of the cave and the surrounding area. So we're here in Middle Kentucky, and it's a great time. We've had a little bit of rain, but also a number of good days, so we're happy with this. The campground is great. I would highly recommend it to anyone traveling through the middle of the Kentucky area looking for a place to stop. The campsites are fairly large and generous. They're mostly graveled. The roads are paved. There are some sharp turns coming in and out, so a little bit of an issue, but no problems with our 40-foot motorhome. We did disconnect the Jeep on entrance, and we'll not hook it back up until we're out at the edge of the park. But it's a great campground, a lot of sites. We're up on the top of the hill. There's some down by the lake. And the lake is quite long. It's about 35 to 40 miles long, depending on the level of the pool. So a lot of boating activities, a lot of fishing, a great place to stay. We'd highly recommend this. And of course, Mammoth Cave is the reason we're here in central Kentucky, and that is an absolutely magnificent thing to see. It is the longest known cavern in the world at 412 or so miles that have been discovered so far, and they're still exploring to try and find more of it, and they keep finding more of it. Also, the cave is still active. There's 5 levels in the cave today. The bottom one, and it's actually only about 400 feet from the top to the bottom, but that's separated into what they consider to be 5 different levels. The bottom level will have water running in it. There's the Styx River, as it's called down there. There's a river down there. I'm not sure about the name of it. And there are still active cave formations going on, and there will be as long as there's water flowing. And it takes, of course, hundreds of years or thousands of years even to carve these passages out. So it's still an active growing cave in that sense. The upper levels, because they are dry, are not active anymore, and very little activity up there. But it's still an interesting sight to see. The tours cover just a small fraction of the cave. The cave is also known for some of its wildlife. It has in the bottom of the cave in the rivers, it has fish with no eyes and crawdads with no eyes. So they've adapted to their environment over eons and don't need eyes. They don't have any coloration. They're basically a kind of a neutral shade. Without coloration, they don't need it. There's no sunlight. There's no predators. They can see them down there. So it's the way they've evolved. So it's an extremely interesting ecosystem. And if you're in the area, have a chance to visit, I would strongly encourage you to go check out Mammoth Cave.
the most famous entrance to the longest cave in the world. Last week I was standing here getting ready to take a group of people into the cave, and a huge bird flew off that hill there. And I mean, it flew 10 feet over our heads. It landed right over there. It was a turkey, you know. Yeah, it was. I mean, I thought it was going to hit us for a while. It's a huge. And then a couple weeks ago, that tree fell there. So hopefully we won't have any mishaps while a group was down here. So hopefully we won't have any mishaps like that, and I'll get us into the cave fairly quickly, so we won't be a target for very long. Got a few things I need to go over before we go into the cave. A few more rules, so hang on for just a second. If you have harder breathing problems, trouble walking long distances, climbing stairs or other health concerns, consider your limitations before you go in the cave. Evacuation from the cave can and will take several hours, especially at this time of night. It's it's going to be dimly lit there. It's going to be more dimly lit than normal. Watch your head, watch your step. Please stay on the trails today. And let's see here. You guys pretty much know all these rules. You know, don't litter and don't take anything out of the cave. Don't write your name on the wall. We're going to see some names written on the wall tonight. That was from a long time ago, so don't add to it. Try to avoid touching the cave wall. There won't be a lot of places in the cave where we'll be able to touch the cave wall tonight, but there will be a few, so do your best not to touch the cave. You know, if you're going down, or if you get off balance, touch a rock. If you're going down, grab any rock you can. Keep yourself safe, but please just don't walk through the cave with your hands on the walls. There's no weather down there to wash off anything you put on those cave walls. Tonight we're going to be talking about legends and illusions inside of Mammoth Cave. And, the Native Americans have been going into this cave for 4,000 to 5,000 years before the first, European American settlers started coming into this area. But, legend that about the refinding of Mammoth Cave, the rediscovery of Mammoth Cave, occurred right at this entrance, right about the late 1700s. There was a pioneer family that lived down on the Green River down there. They were the Houchins family. They had a boy named John. John was given the task of finding his family's dinner, not finding, but actually shooting his family's dinner that night. Given the Kentucky long rifle, sent out to find something to eat. And the legend says that John was setting up on that ridge over there and spotted something that we haven't seen around here for over 100 years. It was big and black and furry. And it was a black bear, yeah. And he lifted that Kentucky long rifle, leaned it against a tree because it was really heavy, and he was only 12 or 13. And boom! And when the smoke cleared, that bear was on the run. He had wounded it. And that bear ran down off the ridge. The legend says ran right into the cave, and John Houchins went into the cave after him. He was given credit for rediscovering Mammoth Cave that day. Yeah. Now, there is some thought that maybe John Houchins was not a native-born Kentuckian, though. But he might have been born in Virginia or Pennsylvania, someplace like that, because obviously a native-born Kentuckian would have shot and killed that bear with one shot. All right, now let's say we'll talk more legends in Mammoth Cave. We'll do some illusions inside of Mammoth Cave tonight. But what I want you also to notice here is this stuff right here. You know, this was part of your cave tour. And up to about 1880, maybe even a little bit later than that, it was part of your cave tour to write your name on the walls here at Mammoth Cave. And that was done, that looks like it's done with a spray can or something, but it was done with candle smoke, you know. They would take a candle, put it on the end of a long stick, some type of beef tallow, maybe something that smoked a lot, put a nail on that stick, and they would hold it up there. And, it took a long time to do that. Because, I don't know if you can see, but when you go past here, look at the arc. You can see dot by dot by dot they did that. And so it took quite a while to do that. George Tapscott here, he left out, he misspelled his name. His Tapscott, he respelled it over here correctly, But you see mistakes every now and then on. Yeah, and one reason you see mistakes is because, you get tired of your neck up like that, for a half hour, 45. So and the wax would be dropping down on them too. So they would sometimes put a mirror on the ground, and be looking down at the ground like that. Well, and you see a lot of backwards letters on a lot of this stuff too. But that was part of your cave tour back in the old day. And this avenue right here, Gothic Avenue, the Haunted Chambers as it was initially called, it has more signatures in it than anywhere in Mammoth Cave. We've estimated there's as many as 7,000 signatures inside of this area here. So. They were coming in and getting the gypsum. Calcium sulfate is, the common name is gypsum. Of course, we use it mostly in drywall today, and we use it in other products too. And they were coming in and getting it. We're sure of that because they left us so much evidence around to prove that they, and I'll show you later on the cave tour, there are places where we can see that they had been scraping on the wall. But we don't know what we got some theories that, they might have been using it as some type of paint, to enhance paints. They might have been using it as some type of soil conditioner. They might have been using it as a rite of passage, but we simply don't know what they were coming in and getting. The interesting thing, they came in from about 4,000 to 2,000 years ago, and then they stopped too. And we're not sure why they stopped. They didn't, they didn't come in from about year zero to about the time that the Daniel Boone and those fellows came in this area here. So. Anybody know what type of rock we're surrounded by here? It's limestone. You can go home and tell everybody you know every rock in Mammoth Cave now, because it's all limestone. And under certain conditions, this limestone rock will evaporate calcium sulfate out of it, and that's what you're seeing. It's just like when you go out and you work real hard in the yard, or you run a race or something, the salt buildup on your arm there, it's coming out of your skin. That's exactly what's happening here. This limestone rock is evaporating this calcium sulfate out of it. The common name for calcium sulfate is gypsum. This is gypsum here, the stuff that you put in drywall, the stuff that's in drywall. I hear it's in certain paints, and I also hear that it's in Twinkies also. But this stuff here is called, these are called snowballs. When the first explorer came through here in 1841, his name was Stephen Bishop. He got into this passageway, first human being ever to be in this passageway. As far as we know, Stephen Bishop saw these on the ceiling, and he said it looked like a bunch of kids had a snowball fight in this room, and all the snowballs were stuck to the ceiling. So he called it the Snowball Room, and we've called it the Snowball Room ever since. And it's an interesting thing about this place in that they were doing all the cooking over there. And we're Kentucky, we like to fry things, And in the early days of the kitchen over there, they had a pretty big operation going on there. They had a buffet line and everything. And, there were a couple thousand people coming through here, this part of the cave during that time. And the cooking, the moisture from the cooking, all the people that were coming through here, the oil droplets that were, in the air, they stuck to these things. And then the lint from the people's clothing, the dust they were kicking up, also stuck to these things. And a mold started to grow on them, a black mold. And so by the 1990s, it was difficult to see the snowballs at that end, because it was all black. It was pretty well black. So they shut this place down during the winter, some winter during the 1990s, and they came in here basically with paper towels and Clorox and dabbed at them and cleaned them up.
My goodness. And
it was a big operation. So since that time, they did not cook after that down here. Pretty much boxed lunches after that. The national park tries to balance the enjoyment of the visitors versus the preservation of the resource. Those are our two missions. If you look at our mission statement, it's enjoyment versus preservation, and we just had too much enjoyment down here, and we were kind of messing things up a little bit. So this gypsum here, it comes out in different ways. It's coming out like a blister or a snowball here. But depending upon the pores that are in this limestone rock, it will come out in different types. So you're seeing the blister formation here. We're going to see flower formations later on in our cave tour. And we're going to see like icing formations later on in our cave tour. You'll see a little bit of black tinge on some of it. And that's simply because when they were coming through here in the 1800s, they used open-faced oil lanterns. And it's funny about those. They're called New England open-face whale oil lanterns. Well, I don't know how much you know about Kentucky geography, but we got a shortage of oils around here. So we use the oil from the kitchen to light the way through the cave. They would, like I say, we like to fry things, bacon, sausage, chicken. They would take the oil from all that, put it straight into those lanterns, and boom, into the cave they'd go. And so it was smoky. And you'll see a lot of this gypsum has a little bit of black on the tips of it. And that's another human impact. Gypsum is normally snow white when it's in its pure state. And we have parts of the cave where that is such, parts that we don't take visitors in, where the gypsum is just absolutely pure snow white. But this part here, it's been affected by years of tourism.
And we're off again today.
And where are we going today, dear?
We're going to the George Patton Museum in Knox, Fort Knox.
Does that mean we get to see the gold?
No.
Oh.
There's no viewing the gold anymore anyway. I don't know what used to be available.
Don't know, but actually, for those of you who are interested, the gold is not actually in Fort Knox. There's a federal depository which is right beside Fort Knox, and that's where the gold actually is. And it is closed to the public, so we can't go in and get a free sample or anything like that.
Darn.
But, yeah, darn is right. But Patton is one of the people I think a lot of, and we'll get to go see his museum, and it's the George Patton Museum and Leadership Institute or something like that is a formal name for it. But we're leaving our Corps of Engineers campground and on the way to Fort Knox, which is actually a town in Tennessee as well as the fort, but it has its own zip code. So that's where we're going to be, and we'll get back with you as we get there and tell you what's going on. We made it through base security. Took a little bit of time to figure out that process, but we got through okay and got into the base, drove around, found the Patton Museum. Mostly well marked, but the last few turns were kind of questionable. Anyway, we're at the entrance ramp to the end of the museum itself, so we'll take off and do some looking and let you know what we find out.
Alrighty, looking forward to it.
way out now from the Patton Museum at Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Learn more about him in a more personal way, a little bit. And of course, a lot about his military background and his thoughts on military leadership. So, well worth the visit, and glad we came.
Yeah, it's a really nice museum, nicely done, a lot of exhibits, pictures of Patton from his youth on up, and some stories about him. For example, I did not know that he participated in the 1912 Olympics and came close to winning a medal. He would have medaled except for his poor marksmanship, of all things, for a soldier. But he placed well up in all. It's a pentathlon competition he was in. He came in like third in fencing and some other areas, but in marksmanship he was like 26 out of 33 or something like that. Way down in there, and his marking in marksmanship, his score in marksmanship with a pistol were very low, and so that kept him away from the bronze medal at the Olympics. But he did participate. After the war, he studied swordsmanship in France, became a master swordsman, actually the first master swordsman in the U.S. Army. Came back and designed the model 1913, I think it was, saber, which was the last saber used by the Army, the last one issued by them to its officers. And he also wrote the manual of arms, if you will, for that, and became the Army's first swordsmanship instructor using that manual of arms and that saber. So interesting military career. Of course, we know a lot about him from World War II. That's where he achieved most of his fame and infamy, if you will, from slapping a couple of soldiers. It cost him his anyway, slapping the soldiers cost him his commanding position to have led the invasion of Europe at Normandy and D-Day. That's our visit to Mammoth Cave in central Kentucky. We're glad you joined us today. If you like this, please give it a thumbs up. We would ask you also to subscribe to the channel. That does help us out. And just click on the red subscribe button down below and you'll be subscribed to the channel. There's also a bell icon down there. If you click on that, you will get a notification from YouTube when we post a new video. We try to post them every Thursday, but that sometimes gets interrupted by our travel schedule. But check back with us next week and see what we've done. Have a great day. Join us in the highways and byways of America. Remember, keep her between the ditches as you drive.